Hello, everyone. Ready for a scary story that'll have you sleeping soundly? Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. And also, don't forget to share where you're listening from. I hope you get a great night's rest. The wind was a constant scream, not a howl, not a whisper, but a full-throated shriek that tore across the frozen wastes like a warning. Dr. Lena Moreau stood at the edge of the research platform, staring out at nothing but endless white. Sky and snow merged into one seamless void. No horizon, no movement, just stillness, so complete it hurt. The transport helicopter had long since vanished, swallowed by the storm. She was alone now, alone with the cold. The entrance to Outpost Vostena bloomed behind her, a steel hatch embedded in black rock, half buried beneath decades of snow. The base had been sealed since 1984, abandoned after an incident that had been redacted in every file she'd requested. No bodies had been recovered, no transmissions, just silence. Lena adjusted her mask. Frost crackled at the edges of her goggles. She keyed in the override code. The hatch opened. The air that escaped smelled of copper and old metal. Inside, the station was preserved like a tomb. Layers of ice clung to the walls. Bulbs flickered with dying power. A hallway stretched ahead, walls lined with rusted lockers and flaking signage in multiple languages. Russian, French, Norwegian, English. A failed experiment in international unity, entombed beneath permafrost. She activated the generator. A low groan echoed through the walls, followed by a few trembling lights sputtering to life. Ancient heating systems creaked to life, coughing warmth through the pipes. Lena unzipped her parka and exhaled alone. That was the assignment. Solo recon, band restoration. The government wanted the site reactivated for high-atmosphere monitoring. That was the official reason. But Lena knew better. You didn't send a neuroscientist to reboot old weather sensors. They wanted her to find something. That night, she explored the station. Each room told a story in dust and decay. With beds still made, dinner trays sealed in plastic wrap, photos curling in the corners, a coffee mug still half full on a metal desk. No sign of struggle, just absence. Her boots echoed through the mess hall as she crossed toward the communications chamber. She turned the main panel on, expecting silence, but the radio crackled, soft at first, then louder. A voice, faint, warbled, female Lena. She froze. The voice was familiar, impossible. She leaned in, heart hammering. Lena, can you hear me? The voice wasn't coming from the mains frequency. It was playing on a loop. She played the recording again and again. The voice was identical to hers. Not similar, not close. Hers. But it wasn't her speaking. She had never said those words. It's waiting, under the ice. The lights above her dimmed. A hum vibrated through the walls. Low, deep, resonant. She turned off the radio, but the voice kept playing. That night, she dreamt of her twin sister, Maya, dead 5 years. She stood barefoot on the frozen lake behind, by their childhood home. Skin pale, eyes wide, frost creeping up her calves. She was whispering, but no sound came out. Lena woke to find her boots wet, as if she'd been walking. Day to dot the power fluctuated. Screens blinked with static dot. Lena explored the lower levels, storage rooms, labs, comes backups. In a maintenance shaft, she found something odd. A journal sealed in a waterproof case, jammed behind a panel. Its entries were fragmented, incoherent, but the last few were legible. They heard it first through the static, not a voice, not a signal, a rhythm, like a breath behind the hiss. No matter where we tuned, it followed, a presence, curious, then hungry. The longer we stayed, the more we forgot who we were. Names began to slip, then faces. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in recognition. Lena closed the journal. The walls around her were silent, but deep in the pipes. Something shifted. She awoke to the sound of her name, but not in a shout, not a scream, a murmur, spoken clearly from just outside her room. Lena, she sat upright, every muscle tensed. The lights above her bed flickered. One buzzed, then burst with a sharp pop that echoed down the corridor. She waited, holding her breath. The voice didn't return. Just the slow, steady drip of melting ice. She searched the hallway barefoot, flashlight in hand. No footprints, no doors ajar. Only the endless hum of machines, struggling to stay alive in the cold. The generator groaned beneath her feet, a low, mechanical heartbeat. She passed the window to the lab observation deck and froze. There was a handprint on the inside of the glass, not hers. Too small, too low, as if a child had pressed their hand. There. But no one had ever brought children to Vostoma. No one living here had children at all. She checked the lab empty, but when she turned to leave, her breath caught in her throat. The handprint was gone. Later that day, she discovered a locked door she hadn't noticed before. Basement level 3. No markings. No electronic lock. Just an old keyhole. Frost-trimmed and rusted. The schematics didn't mention it. She searched the facility for a key. Found nothing. But that night she dreamed again. Maya was standing by the lake. Only this time she spoke. "You remember this place," she said softly. "But it doesn't remember you." Lena stared. "You're not real." Maya smiled. "A sad, crooked thing." "No," she whispered. "But it is." Day 3. The temperature dropped sharply. The base. Peters couldn't keep up. The walls began to sweat. Ice formed on the inside of the windows. And every time Lena looked away from a reflective surface, her reflection lingered, smiling, tilting its head, blinking out of sync. She avoided mirrors after that, and metal surfaces, and her own shadow when she could. She finally opened the locked door, not with a key. It was already open when she passed it. Again that night dot. Inside was darkness. Not pitch black. A soft, bluish kind of dark, like ice beneath moonlight. She stepped in, and the door shut behind her. The air was still, thicker. It wasn't a room. It was a shaft, a spiral stairwell descending deeper into the earth than any schematic admitted. The steps were narrow and slick. The walls wept moisture every few meters. Old wires lined the walls, connected to rusted equipment that hadn't worked in decades. But one of them, a tape recorder, flickered to life as she passed and played her voice. But he's still down there, watching. He's part of the ice now. She stopped, stared. The tape hissed and stopped. No explanation, no power source, no reason, only memory. Hers, but not. At the bottom of the shaft, she found the observation room. It wasn't a lab, it was a shrine. Dozens of notebooks, chalk scrawlings, radio equipment, drawings of circles, eyes, teeth, and in the center, a single phrase repeated across the walls, scribbled in English, Russian, Norwegian, over and over. I to remembers you. Lena backed away slowly, and a panel on the far wall slid open. Behind it, ice, clear, glass-like, something frozen inside, not human, vaguely humanoid, but wrong, too tall, no face, arms that didn't end in hands, and eyes, hundreds of them sealed just beneath the surface of the ice, open and staring, unblinking. Then she heard it again, her name, Lena, not from the intercom, not from a speaker, from inside her, a whisper, deep in her own throat, that didn't come from her lungs. The whisper lingered, not like an echo in the air, but a taste on her tongue, cold, metallic, clinging to her breath. It wasn't just sound anymore. It had weight. It pressed gently behind her eyes, as if testing the space there, as if making room. Lena stepped back from the frozen wall, heart pounding. The figure inside the ice didn't move, not physically, but she felt it notice her. The eyes, scattered across its submerged form, gleamed faintly in the dim light. They didn't blink, they absorbed. She stumbled up the stairs, breath ragged, hand clutching the railing. The base was no longer just cold, it was wrong. The walls seemed closer, the hallways longer. Every door she passed looked unfamiliar, though she had walked these corridors 20 times. She checked her watch. It had stopped. Hours had passed, or minutes, or none at all. In her room, she found her journal open. She hadn't left it. Way, and on the page, in handwriting that mimicked hers, but was a single line. You brought me here. She slammed it shut. Day 4. She woke to silence. Not the normal silence of the base. Humming, and mechanical, and cold. True silence. The generator had died sometime in the night. No lights, no heat, no hum. She layered up, pulled her headlamp on, banged, checked the systems. All dead. Batteries drained. Every backup source empty, impossible, in the comms room. The old radio clicked on. Static poured out. Then a voice, soft and distant. This is Vostana Base. Repeat, Vostana Base. We are no longer alone. Lena froze. The voice was Maya's. The same cadence, same breath pattern. He's been inside me for days. I don't know if I'm still me. The tape stopped. The room dimmed, and in the frost on the radio panel, 5 words formed from nothing. I am still inside you. Lena ran, not out of fear, not yet. She knew what this was. Now the entity wasn't haunting the base. It was inhabiting her, piece by piece, memory by memory. She returned to the shrine room below, back to the frozen figure. She didn't know why, but it knew. It had been waiting. The wall of ice had cracked, just a little, just enough. A sliver of something black pulsed beneath the fissure, not liquid, not solid, something in between, and it spoke in her voice. You left me there when I needed you most. You weren't at the lake. You never came. Lena backed away. No, she whispered. That wasn't you wanted her gone. No, you felt relief. Stop. That's why I found you. She screamed, a raw, human sound. The kind made when logic fails and something deeper breaks through. But the bass didn't answer. No echo. Only the slow, creaking sound of the ice shifting. When she returned to the surface level, the bass had changed. The walls bore symbols she hadn't seen before. Circles carved into the metal. Eye-like shapes gouged into the floors. And shadows that didn't follow the laws of light. A corridor stretched longer than it had any right to. Doors stood open that didn't exist yesterday, and every reflection in glass, in ice, in the puddles gathering on the floor, showed Burr alone, until it didn't in the hallway outside her room. She paused. Her reflection was still watching. Then it moved, a sharp twitch of the head. Lena did not. The reflection raised its hand. She didn't. Then it whispered, below the ice, you remembered, and smiled. Lena smashed the mirror. It shattered instantly, a satisfying, splintering sound. But the image remained, not on the glass. In her mind, that smile, that voice, the words burned behind her eyes, playing over and over, louder than her thoughts, below the ice. You remembered. She backed away. The hallway swam round her. Floor, wall, ceiling, all shifting, all wrong. She tried to focus, counted her breaths. 5 in, 5 out. The silence deepened. Something else breathed beneath it. Not her, not human. She locked herself in the medbay. It was the only room without reflective surfaces. She pulled the emergency shutters over the window, turned off every monitor, and sat in the dark. She tried to remember what day it was, tried to remember what she had come here to do. Everything was slippery now. Her memories felt cracked, rearranged. Was she still the only one here? Had she always been? She opened her notebook, flipped to the first page. It didn't say what she remembered writing. My name is Lena Moreau. I am the vessel. I came home. Her pen lay beside it, still warm. She hadn't written that, had she? She didn't know anymore. She fell asleep and dreamt of the lake again. Only this time she was under it, sinking, the surface a dull gray above, light fading. Figures watched from the ice above, dozens of them, eyeless, mouthless, but they spoke in thoughts, in memory. They said, we've always been here. She woke to the sound of humming, a soft tune, familiar her. Mother, used to hum it while folding laundry. But her mother had never been to the Arctic, never heard of Vostina. The melody came from down the hall. She didn't want to follow it, but her body moved on its own. She walked in darkness, guided by that slow, familiar rhythm, a lullaby in the mouth of madness. The humming led her to the core lab, the original drilling chamber where the team had bored deep into the bedrock years ago. Searching for magnetic anomalies, the hole in the center of the room was still open. It went down far beyond the lights, far below the ice. Something pulsed at the bottom, like a heartbeat. She heard it then, not a voice, a feeling, a recognition, like a name being spoken in a language older than words, felt in the blood, known by the bones of Lena, not a call, a claim. The lights above flickered, the shadows bent toward her, and then she saw herself at the edge of the pit, dressed the same, face identical, eyes hollow. This version of her smiled gently and said, "We were always meant to come back." Lena stumbled back, but the figure didn't move, didn't chase. It only said one more thing. "You brought the voice with you. You gave it a name. Now it wants more." And then from behind her came another voice, familiar, breaking, fragile Maya. She turned sharply, but there was no one there. Only her own reflection in the glass of the pre-observation window. Tears ran down its cheeks. Hers did not. Then it whispered, "I'm still inside." Lena pressed her forehead against the glass, staring, put into her own reflection, not out of fear anymore, but exhaustion. Her body ached with a fatigue that went deeper than bone. Sleep-deprived, light-starved, and gasping for clarity, she searched the image before her for some sign of herself. But what stared back wasn't her. It was a version that remembered things. She didn't dot it, whispered. "We died down there, Lena." She backed away slowly, turned. The hallway was no longer empty. Footsteps echoed behind her, soft, wet, deliberate. She didn't run. Not this time. She walked toward them, at the junction near. Sealed archives. She saw the outline of a figure, tall, faceless, not human, but wearing human shape like clothing. A silhouette made of vibration and frost, and in its place, she saw flashes, not dreams, not memories, memories, but not hers. A hand reaching for a lever underground, voices arguing in a dozen languages, blood smeared across white tiles, someone whispering through the radio, "It knows our names." A group surrounding the figure in the ice, chanting, hoping, failing. She clutched her head. Pain flared behind her eyes. The entity, the listener, was digging deeper now, feeding her history like it was her own. She saw faces, names, guilt, memories of men and women she'd never met, being rewritten into her mind. Worse, she was starting to believe they had happened to her, hadn't they? She retreated to the main command center, a ring of ancient control panels and analog equipment, a wall of data logs. She tore open the cabinets, pulled out old tapes, shoved one after another into the deck. Most were static. One clicked and played Dr. Lena Moreau, recording day 13. Symptoms include insomnia, memory distortion, increasing episodes of identity loss, ... double quotes. Lena froze. That was her voice. The subject me's beginning to experience feedback from the signal source. I think the presence below isn't just observing anymore. It's mimicking. It speaks in memory. The tape ended with a sharp, garbled sound, like a breath caught in a throat that didn't exist. And then, in the speaker, "Do you remember now?" She ran to the archive, the door that had once been sealed, now open. Inside, stacks of files, data tapes, equipment wrapped in tarp, a cot, empty coffee cans, a camera, photographs. She pulled them into the light. Every image showed her, or someone that looked exactly like her. Different clothes, different years, decades apart. In one, she wore a red parka, her sister's, but she had never been to the Arctic before this mission. Never worn that coat. Another photo, her, standing beside the original research team, all of them dead by 1984. On the back of one photo was written, "Lena, M4th cycle. Preserved host shows consistent compatibility. Memory reset required." Her knees buckled. The room tilted. This wasn't her first time. Here, this wasn't her only life. She was the vessel. She had always been the vessel. A siren began to wail. Not real. But in her head, warning, pressure, feedback. The entity was no longer whispering. It was speaking clearly. "Your memories are mine. Your body is mine. Your voice was never yours." She screamed, but it came out calmly, evenly. No. Her voice, it stopped. The mirror in the archive flickered. Her reflection stepped out. Not physically. Psychically. It stood across from her, a perfect copy, but devoid of grief, of fear, of humanity. And it said, "We are almost complete." The mirror's self stood still, blinking slowly, breathing softly, not as mimicry, but as ritual. Its every motion was perfect, practiced, polished. Lena stared into its eyes and saw nothing behind them. No emotion, no spark, just space. Just space. Deep, inviting, empty. By a container. The reflection spoke again, with perfect cadence. The body was borrowed. The soul was not needed. You held the door open. Lena clutched at the desk behind her, nails digging into rusted metal. "I didn't open anything," she said through her teeth. The reflection tilted its head. "You did when you grieved, when you remembered." A deep groan echoed through the base, steel contracting, ice shifting. No, deeper than that. The structure itself was reacting, not just to weather, to her, to choice. She backed away from the mirror. Her knees were weak, but she didn't fall. She reached into her jacket, pulled the last emergency flare from her kit, and lit it. A burst of red light flooded the room. For a moment, the mirror flickered. The figure shuddered, but did not vanish. Flesh cannot resist forever. We have been here before, and you chose us. "No," Lena whispered. The entity stepped forward through the mirror, not walking on the floor, but gliding across space, tethered to her by thought, by memory. You remember Maya. She froze. She remembered you. She tried to resist. You didn't come. You let her die. The flare dropped from her hand, hissing on the floor. Her vision blurred with heat. Memory collided with reality. The last phone call, the last scream dot, the moment Maya had whispered through the phone. Something's in me, Lena, and it sounds like you. And Lena hadn't believed her, had said she needed rest. Medication, time, had left her alone. The reflection took another step closer, almost touching now. But Lena wasn't retreating anymore. She understood the entity wasn't just a spirit, not a ghost, not a demon. It was a cycle, a parasitic echo passed through grief, through memory, through regret. And she was the vessel not because she was chosen, but because she was willing. She had come here to forget, but forgetting fed it. She turned, ran, down the corridor, past the control room, past the generator, back to the observation shaft. The spiral staircase yawned beneath her. She descended with frozen hands gripping the rail, back to the core chamber to the ice. It had cracked open further. The being within was no longer still. The surface rippled like glass under boiling water. Shapes moved beneath it. Eyes opened, closed, opened again. It whispered, "You belong here." She stepped onto the platform, looked into the ice, and saw herself. Dozens of her from lives before, from failures, from the last cycle. Some were screaming, some were silent. All were hollow, and they stared up at her, mouthing the same phrase in unison. Choose. Lena stood still, cold cutting into her lungs, mind fraying. And for a moment, she stopped resisting. She felt the warmth of the entity slide across her thoughts like silk. She felt her grief loosen, her memories soften. It would be easier to let go, pick to vanish into the spiral of forgotten selves. But then she reached into her coat and pulled the old journal from the first expedition, the one she'd found sealed behind the wall. She flipped to the final page. The ink was smeared, but one phrase, boss still visible. To break the loop, the vessel must choose to carry without surrendering. She understood. It didn't want her to choose. It wanted her to surrender. So instead she smiled and said aloud, "I know who I am." The chamber trembled. The ice split. The mirror self howled. The reflection cracked. Across space, like glass, dropped from a height, and a voice screamed from inside her. No, the scream didn't come from her throat. It came from everywhere. The walls of the chamber shook violently, raining down shards of frost and bits of steel. The air split with pressure, like a plane breaching sound, and then collapsed in on itself. The reflection shattered, not just in glass, but in space, tearing like fabric, unraveling around her. And still Lena stood. The journal in her hand burned at the edges, pages blackened, symbols evaporated. But she read the final line again. As the world tore around her, carry it, but do not surrender. The listener screamed again, this time not enraged. In fear. It tried to claw its way out, to escape, to flee. But she held it. She bound it, not with words, not with ritual, but with identity. She called herself back by name, by memory. She thought of Maya, not in guilt, but in love, of her sister's love, of the lake when it was calm, of childhood before the fracture. She thought of her own voice, the real one. And in that moment, the presence inside her turned to glass, fragile, shivering, and then silence. When she awoke, the chamber was cold and still. The ice had cracked completely. The thing beneath was gone. No eyes, no form, no form, no presence, no presence, just steam rising faintly from the stone. She walked out slowly, up the spiral stair, through the base. Every surface was still, every reflection hers, and only hers. Boughs sighed. The storm had cleared. The sky was blue. The chopper arrived 2 hours. Later, 2 weeks later, Lena sat in a debriefing room. Fluorescent lights overhead. A recorder blinking red. The agent across from her asked, "What did you find in the ice, Doctor?" "Moreau," she smiled faintly. "Myself." He frowned. "Did you experience any hallucinations?" "Plenty," she replied. "Do you believe you were under the influence of any substance?" "No," she said calmly. "Then how do you explain the things you wrote?" He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was her journal, the final entry in her own handwriting. I brought it home. That night, in her hotel bathroom, Lena stared into the mirror. Her reflection stared back, still, natural, human. She leaned in, studied her own eyes, and then, just for a second, something blinked behind them. Something small, something quiet. She straightened, washed her face, and whispered to herself, "You'll stay quiet. I know who I am." And from deep within, like a memory waiting for its moment, "For now,